We're going to continue with Genesis chapter 1, and we're going to be looking at verses, actually 2 through the end of the chapter. Just by way of review, last week we went over the first verse. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So basically how that synopsizes would be the all-call for God from nothing, created everything that needed to be made to make whatever we have now possible. Kind of it. The omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent God did it all from nothing. And I said that if we can believe that in its context and truly understand what it means, that the rest of the Bible is pretty easy to kind of say, okay, I can believe this. If you can make everything out of nothing, then whatever else happens next, he can do it.
Amen.
So that's what we're going to look at. And again, that first verse was kind of like just a big shot of this is what it was. In the beginning, he created it. Okay. And now from verses 2 to the end, we're going to kind of get if you remember, Cliff Notes. That's kind of what we're going to get. Just another brief synopsis of how things were done for the next 6 days really of creation, 7 of creation. So starting in verse 2, it says, "And the earth was a formless and desolate emptiness, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters." The earth was a formless and desolate emptiness. That word formless, so here's the idea that it's giving to us. As of yet, the earth had no physical existence. That's what it's saying. I want to use this analogy. It's like up to this point, all the ingredients were present, but they had not been put together yet. Okay? That's all. Everything was there that was needed, but it wasn't put together. And this desolate emptiness, it tells us that it actually lacked substance. In other words, there was no distinguishing or identifiable characteristics to it yet. Again, back to that cake analogy. All the necessary ingredients are present, but until they're put together by the baker, the uneducated eye only sees flour and eggs and butter and pans and that's all they see. They don't see the whole thing. Nobody's put it together yet. Everything that was necessary was already there. It just hadn't been put together yet. That's all. And it says darkness was over the surface of the deep. And this idea it was a lot for me to get my head around and understand what it meant. That the illusion here is that even in the depths it's called subterranean waters, the depths of the oceans, in the abysses of the sea, in the midst of absolute absence of any light, here's what we're told. That the presence of God is found even there. In the midst of this place of complete and total darkness. He was there. It made me think of something of Psalm 139. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It says, "Oh Lord, you've examined my heart. You know everything about me. You know what's up when I sit down or stand up. You know my thoughts, even when I'm far away. You see me when I travel and when I rest at home, and you know everything I do. You know what I'm going to say even before I say it, Lord. You go before me and you follow me. You place your hand of blessing upon my head. And such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too great for me to understand. I can never escape your spirit. I can never get away from your presence. If I go up to heaven, you're there. If I go down to the grave, you're there. If I ride the wings of the morning, if I dwell in the farthest oceans, even there your hand will guide me and your strength will support me. I could ask the darkness to hide me and the light around me become night. But even in darkness, I cannot hide from you. To you, the night shines as bright as the day. Darkness and light are the same to you." There he was in the midst of the darkest parts that we can see. I was watching different things, videos now and reading things about the ocean and its depths and how you could basically fit Mount Everest upside down in there, and it's still a lot more down than that. We just don't know what's there. And then they start showing the animals that are down there. There's some freaky looking fish. I saw a thing they had a couple of days ago where they finally got pictures of a translucent octopus, which was so cool. But these are things that are there that, I mean, in these depths that we would never know of. Yet in the midst of all of that, God was there. And then it says, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. So what it's saying is that the Holy Spirit was, in a very real sense, he was gently brooding over creations. I grew up, my grandfather used to manage a poultry farm. And you get the chickens and the chicks and stuff, and they would get over the little chickens, right? They kind of protect them and keep them warm and stuff. That's brooding over them. So the Holy Spirit, in a sense, was over creation, just protecting it, keeping it present there in the beginning. And in a figurative sense, the Holy Spirit was sitting on the earth like a mother eagle does to hatch her baby eaglets, to protect them, and eventually to help these little eaglets learn how to fly. So the Holy Spirit was there the whole time, kind of overseeing, protecting all of this as it was going on. Now there's a term you're going to hear over and over. It's used 10 times in this chapter, or a variance of it, and that phrase is according to its own kind. You're going to hear that over and over and over. You'll read it numerous times. Now the implication here is that while we may see microevolution, small changes within a species, we don't find any credible evidence anywhere of great changes or macroevolution, like from one species to another. You don't find that anywhere. You don't see like a mouse becoming a bird, or a frog becoming a rabbit. You just don't see that. In 1 Corinthians 15:39, it says this: "Not all flesh is the same, but indeed one flesh is of men, another flesh is of beasts, and another flesh is of birds, and another is of fish. Each has its own flesh." All different. All different. So, day one, what happened? In verses 3 through 5, it says, "Then God said," and that God said, that's used 9 times in this chapter, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. That it was good, used 7 times. "And God separated the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, one day." So God spoke light into existence. And essentially, this is what it says. God said, "Light be," and it was. That was it. There was no major production that happened. He just said it. Light be, and light was. That's all. It was that simple for him. Now, the next part starts to melt my brain a little bit, because here's what it says. It says that he separated the light from the dark. Think about that. He separated the light from the dark. That word separated in 1:4 is the Hebrew word badal, and it means to divide, to separate, to distinguish. It means to make it separate. One of the commentaries I read says, John Gill saw this division as the original division of light and dark particles. His quote is, "And God divided the light from the darkness, by which it should seem that they were mixed together, the particles of light and darkness." So they were there. He just says, put the light ones here, I'm going to put the dark ones here. I'm going to separate them there. Everything was there. I'm going to separate it now. Emil Brunner, who was a Swiss theologian, said that God not only created light, but he also created darkness. He based this on Isaiah 45:7 that says, "I form the light and create darkness." And it makes sense, since if God didn't create darkness, then where did it come from, right? He created everything. But the question still remains, how did God separate the light from the darkness? Truthfully, I have no idea. Nobody really knows. We don't. All we know for certain is this: is where there's light, where there's no light, there's darkness. And where there is light, darkness cannot be. That's what we know. And the reason for this, according to Genesis 1:4, is that God commanded them to be separate. And he divided. And that's why. We just know God said that it has to be this way. And that is why it is. And remember what I said at the beginning of last week? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And if we could believe that of nothing he made everything, that whatever he says after that, we should be okay and to understand and believe. Jeremiah 32:27 says this. And I'll be repeating this. Jeremiah 32:27 says, "Behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too difficult for me?" No, not at all. So if it says he divided the light and the dark, then guess what? He divided the light and the dark. Now, day 2, it says in verses 6 through 8, "Then God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate waters from the waters. And God made the expanse, and he separated the waters that were below of the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven, and there was evening and there was morning, and that was the second day." So here we see that God creates the sky. When we teach the kids days of creation, we say two blue. He separated the waters above from the waters below, and he put the air, space, in the middle. So God creates the sky, and the earth now has an atmosphere. And the sky now primarily, if not solely, serves to form a barrier between the water upon the surface of the earth and the water that's in the air. So here's what it is. At this point, God separates the water on the earth. So we're talking lakes, rivers, seas, streams, oceans, and the water in the air, the water that's in the clouds. He separates this now. And that separation is made by the sky that's there. So I got to thinking, how awesome is this design? I mean, really, to separate it this way. How does it work? So like I said, I was doing a lot of reading for this again. And the USGS has an article that says the atmosphere and the water cycle. It says this: the atmosphere is a superhighway in the sky that moves water everywhere over the earth. Water at the earth's surface evaporates into water vapor, which rises up into the sky to become part of a cloud, which will float off with the winds, eventually releasing water back to the earth as precipitation. So there's this cycle. It just does it. And the thing is, it does it all by itself. There's not one guy that has to be there going, "Well, don't forget to pull the switch," or "Don't forget to put a quarter in," or "Don't forget to shake this." It just all by itself. There's a design as to how it works. One article I said, and now this one, if you get kind of freaked out easy, if you're real nervous, okay, you probably want to hear this. Cumulus clouds, those little fluffy looking floating ones that are up there. One of those clouds weighs about 1.1 million pounds. It's 5.5 tons. Still, that heavy cloud that's floating over your head is floating there because the air below it is even heavier. God thought of everything. He made it a certain way. So here's what happens. God created the cloud to be less dense than the drier and the more dense air, which by design is not going to allow that cloud to float. Think about that. So as you're walking and you're looking at the clouds and they're billowing and you're going, "How beautiful." Just remember that each one of those clouds weighs about 5.5 tons, filled with water. And it's there. And who's keeping it up there? God. To me, that just blew me away, because I look at it, I'm like, I am so glad that gravity is so precise. Remember we talked about that last week? If it was any stronger, could you imagine 5.5 tons just falling on you? There's no way. I don't know, Anthony. It seems kind of hard to believe. Jeremiah 32:27. "Behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too difficult for me?" No. Day 3, verse 9. "Then God said, let the waters below the heavens be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees on the earth bearing fruit according to their kind, each with seed in them. And it was so. The earth produced vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their kind, and trees bearing fruit with seed in them according to their kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, a third day." So here, God creates dry land. So continents, islands, they now exist. They're now above the water. And those large bodies he called seas or oceans, and the ground he just called the ground. He called it the land. Now, something interesting about the seas. Our oceans cover more than 70% of the Earth's surface, over 70%. The majority of all life on the Earth is aquatic. And 94% of the Earth's living species now exist in the oceans. And this is what really got me thinking. Yet, less than 5% of the oceans have been explored. We haven't even begun to see what's in there yet. Another article I read said we know more about Venus and Mars than we know about our own ocean. Think about that. Between 70 and 80% of all the oxygen that we breathe is produced by marine plants, nearly all of which is marine algae. And what did God say about that? He said, you know what? This is good. This is good. And we're also told that God created all the plant life, both large and small. Right? From the redwoods to the dandelions. He created it all. That was just what he did. One thing that I thought was interesting when I was reading about this was there's a I forgot what the leaf is for this plant, but it's like 8 feet across. That's how big this one leaf can get. He made that. And the smallest one, I think it's a wolf flower or something like that. This plant is so small that you can fit 2 of them into a letter O on your typewriter. He created all of those things and everything in between. And then he created this life to be self-sustaining. The plants were created to produce after their own kind. And there was all kinds of plants, it says. Because I'm sure you're wondering, there's over 300,000 species of plants that we've identified. 300,000. So if you have allergies, the earth has more than 80,000 species of edible plants. 70,000 plant species are used for medicine, and half of the drugs that are prescribed in the U.S. have plant origins that come out of the rainforest. And the rainforest produces about half of our oxygen as well. Remember how it says they produce after their own kind? I grew up in a place called Prunedale, and in there, a lot of oak trees. And I thought this was interesting, that oak trees, they don't produce acorns until they're at least 50 years old. But producing after its own kind. And this I just thought was too cool not to share, is that apples, potatoes, and onions, they all have the same taste. To test this, you just gotta hold your nose, and they're all gonna taste the same to you. I don't know, Anthony, I believe you, but I don't know about that one. Jeremiah 32:27. Behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too difficult for me? All these things he does. And again, after all of this, what does God say? It is good. It's good. I heard one comedian say this, and it made a lot of sense. He says, we make something and it's awesome. It's fantastic. It's the best ever. Right? He says, we make these cars and they can run super fast, great suspension and all this. He goes, but after a while, the tires go flat, the balance goes off, all this happens. But to us, that's awesome, an awesome automobile. He says, and God makes a rabbit that runs and goes and turns, and he says, or a chicken that, have you ever tried to catch a chicken? Amazing. And God just says, you know what, it's good. And that's good, way better than our awesome. Think about that. Day 4. Verse 14, then God said, let there be light in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night. And they shall serve as signs and for seasons and for days and years. They shall serve as light in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth. And it was so. God made the 2 great lights, the greater light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night. He made the stars also. God placed them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, and to govern the day and the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, a 4th day. So now God creates the stars and the heavenly bodies. I think it's this weekend we'll be able to see Jupiter and Mars and Earth and the moon all really clear up in the sky. But something I thought was really cool was that God's design, the way he made Jupiter, its gravity is so strong that it protects the earth from a lot of collisions. You see, they call Jupiter the vacuum cleaner of the solar system. And the reason they call it this is because its gravitational force eats up asteroids and comets that are coming nearby, stopping them before they hit us. So God put it there to kind of take care of us. That's like our last line of defense. That's what he did for us. You know, here we are talking about our Space Force. He's got that covered already. Now, did you know that there's more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on the earth? Okay. In case you're wondering, the scientists estimate today that there are 7 quintillion, 500 quadrillion grains of sand. That's a number 75 followed by 17 zeros. Okay. So many grains of sand there, but there's more stars than that. Our sun, which is a star, is 27 million degrees Fahrenheit at its core. Remember I talked about the water? There's even floating water in outer space. This I thought was super cool. Astronomers have found a massive water vapor cloud which holds 140 trillion times the mass of water in the Earth's oceans, somewhere around 10 billion light years away, making it the largest discovery of water ever found. That's just floating up there. For what? I don't know. But it's there. Jeremiah 32:27, behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too difficult for me? One of the purposes of the orbit, the movement of the stars and the planets is to help us keep track of times and seasons. The Earth spins on its axis, and we get night and day from there. It moves around the sun in this long kind of a circle, and it takes about 365.25 days to do it. We get our seasons because of our tilt. Everything is set up just so. It's not by accident. Acts 1:7 says this, it's not for you to know times or seasons that the Father has fixed by his own authority. God set this up and says, these are the seasons, these are the times, this is how it's going to work. You see, every change of season for us should remind us that God is sovereign. He keeps his promises. This is all part of his creative design, his timetable. And these seasons, they're going to last as long as the earth is here. He put them there for a reason. And what's interesting to me also is that depending on where we are, we can get more seasons in other places, right? There's some places where you just don't get, a winter, I've spent February in Chicago. Bro, not going back. Okay, I got there, it was 10 below. I'm from California, that was not good. Then you go to other places like Arizona or Hawaii where, you get Christmas and it's, 72 degrees. Or a friend of mine in Arizona is like, what's your Christmas tree? Oh, dude, we get a cactus. We just decorate that. You don't get all the seasons like in other places. So I think, God is so wonderful in how he does that. And these two great heavenly bodies that he makes in relation to us, the first is the sun, which the primary source is just to give us light. And how big is our sun that God created? Well, if it was an empty ball, you could fit 1.3 million Earths inside of it. That's how big our sun is. And the moon is the second one that reflects the light of the sun. Now, the moon also has an effect on us because it's gravity. You know how we have to get high tide and low tide? That's all from the way the moon hits and how it pulls. So it all works together. Hey, I forgot where I saw this at, but there was something that happened in some part of the world where due to this storm that hit, the sea there just separated. So there's like this embankment of sand in between. And people are going from all over to walk on this thing because the sea separated right there. But all the people around are going, it's fine, do that, but we don't know at what time this is going to change its mind and cover up again. So people kind of run out there real quick and run back just to check it out, walk with it, where the sea split. But these are things that happen. And the movement of these bodies distinguishes our day from our night. And again, God finishes all this, and what did he say? It's good. It's all good. Verse 20, then God said, let the waters teem with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth and in the open expanse of the heavens. And God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves. You know, there I think about Loch Ness Monster and all these other things. There's got to be something out there that we don't know about. Really. When you read about Behemoth and Leviathan and stuff in the book of Job, there's got to be something under there. Hey, I'm just saying, because they talked about these huge squids that will actually grab ships. They see these great, the sperm whales, others that are so big that they have these markings from the squids that grab them with their tentacles with sharp points and just shreds them. So there's huge things under that we have no idea about. And God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarmed, according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, and God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning on the fifth day. So God creates all life of every kind that lives in the water at this point. That's what we see. Scientists today estimate that there's about 1 million species of animals that live in the ocean. 1 million. They also estimate that 91% of the ocean species have yet to be classified, and that more than 80% of our ocean is unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored. So there's a whole lot more room for a lot more things to be that God just put there. I know some of you fish. There are over 30,000 different species of fish alive today. Some of you just like to eat fish. That's just a whole lot of different flavors too. A blue whale weighs as much as 30 elephants, and it's as long as 3 Greyhound buses. Jeremiah 32:27. Behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too difficult for me? And birds, there's over 10,000 bird species. They're divided into about 245 different bird families. Have you been to like what's a bird place called? Anyway, those big cages where they have all the birds, you get to walk around and see them and hear them, and all the different colors and the sounds and there's a bird that's special to me. It's the hummingbird. And there's a ton of facts about that bird. But one thing that I thought was interesting, it's the only bird that can fly backwards and sideways. No other bird can do that. Yesterday I was at my in-laws, and I was in their pool, and I'm looking at the trees and the patterns of the palms, and just everything was just, I was kind of overwhelmed. And just looking at nature, and then out of nowhere, this little swallow, and I think everybody thought I was kind of being antisocial, but it was just being God time, I guess. And this little swallow just starts swooping around, and he would come, and he would come down, and he would just barely tap the water to get water to drink. And I'm like turning around like a fool, and just looking, while I'm following this bird, watching, but with such precision, it would just go and come back up. And it would go back around. And then I would watch it, like, where'd it go? And it was, the sun's starting to go down. And it would do it again. But it just knew exactly what it was doing. And I know pilots, some of them are really good, but to handle them, like, no. And that bird, like nothing, it's like, I'm thirsty, where's water? There. And it kept going. That's how God created them, just to know how to do these things. They took no flight classes. They just did it. And all these creatures are made with the ability to perpetuate their species through reproduction. They're all the same. Another bird has another bird, but they're all the same species, according to its kind. Again, this phrase emphasizes that God allows tremendous variation within its kind, but one kind will never become another kind. And again, God says what? This is good. I like this. And then we got day 6. That's where we show up. Then God said, let the earth produce living creatures according to their kind, livestock and crawling things, and animals on the earth according to their kind. And it was so. And God made the animals of the earth according to their kind, and the livestock according to their kind, and everything that crawls on the ground according to its kind. And God saw what? That it was good. Here we see that all animal life was created, and they all reproduce after their own kind. It talks about livestock, or an Hollister. So I thought this would be interesting. There's over 800 different cattle breeds that are recognized worldwide. 800. And I mean, we've all seen cows. Do you know they can almost see in a 360-degree radius? Because of the way their eyes are? They have a hard time kind of seeing in front. That's why they kind of look at you sideways. But they can almost see 360 degrees because of the way their eyes were placed. I thought that was like, really? Because you look at a cow and I don't think they're looking at anything, But yeah, they can see everything that's around them. And I thought this too. One, they're super skittish. They get really scared with noises and stuff. And they don't like being by themselves. You know that? They do not like to be by themselves. They're very social. The only time they're by themselves is if they're sick. They kind of quarantine themselves. Or if they're about to give birth. They want privacy. Other than that, no. They like to be with other cows. And a cow can smell things up to 6 miles away. 6 miles away, they can smell stuff. Again, and God made all of this. I told you last week I like rhinos, and even though they're not considered cattle, rhinos, they're very intelligent, okay? And they can be trained in the same way you can train dogs. Did you know that? The same way you train dogs, you can train a rhino. In fact, trainers have found different whistles and treats can be effective tools, just like when you're training a dog to train a rhino. They're smart. We look at them like, what a big oaf. No, they're very smart. Again, Jeremiah 32:27. Behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too difficult for me? What about crawling things? Anybody got an aversion to bugs? Ants. You ever see ants? Ants never sleep. Did you know that? They do not sleep. Oh, and they don't have lungs. I didn't know that. Anybody hear of cockroaches? We can't not talk about them. They like to eat calloused skin, fingernails, and eyelashes. Now, they don't usually go after living humans, but they have been known occasionally to bite people when they are sleeping. Yeah, and we found out when we went to Puerto Rico that they fly. Right? A whole lot of different stuff. I got bit by one at the movies before in Puerto Rico. That was a crazy experience. A cockroach. They can crawl up to 3.4 miles per hour, which doesn't seem like much unless you compare it to one of us. That would be equivalent to one of us crawling 200 miles per hour. So they can move. And for every human that's in the world, there's 1 million ants. Don't we like it that it's green outside and we can go into the fields and walk and see, get pictures, right? Us, our kids, the dogs, yeah. On the average, there's 50,000 spiders per acre in green areas. But God made all of this. This is great stuff. You ever have a fly bugging you? You hear it, zzz, yeah? The fly hums in the key of F. Just in case you wanted to know. These are all things that God has done. So I think you can kind of understand why I was sitting there yesterday in the pool kind of going, man, look at this. Listen to what's going on. I can't, Tina knows forever. I am so fascinated by the sounds of the birds in the tree. I would just sit there and I would just sit there and listen. Me, my coffee, my Bible, leave me alone and let me hear the birds. And I'm good. It is just such an amazing thing. Or the crickets. Yeah. This is all stuff God did to say, hey, I'm here and I love you. Notice me, right? What does the Psalm tells us? The heavens declare the glory of the Lord. We can't just look at this and go, oh yeah, that's neat. No, that is awesome. It's humbling. Behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too difficult for me? And the other animals that were created, you know, ostriches? We have an ostrich farm here. Something like that. Or emu or something. Ostriches, they can run faster than horses. And male ostriches, they can roar like lions. Again, just stuff that God did. Stuff that we don't expect. Jeremiah 32:27, behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too difficult for me? You know, I pray that God will help me just to look at all that he's done like a child looks at it. Have you ever seen a kid when they see something for the first time? Or they're just fascinated with it, and they just look. And they're like, what are you looking at? That's spider. And all we do is go, that's gross, or get the chancla, right? We're ready to get rid of it. And they're like, no, look, it's doing this, and it's doing that, and it's doing... We have this one spider at the house that's in the corner. We can never catch it to kill it, because he's, I don't know, smart or something. But this web, it's like super strong. We will like throw stuff at it and boom, and it just sticks and like what? You know, I saw a bird that flew into this sunroom that were the place that we're staying, and it like hit the web, and it was like struggling with that. And you know, I went over there and kind of shushed the bird so we'd get out of it, but I was like, if that thing can hold a bird, I'm not messing with that spider. You know? But that's what was going on. I mean, just the way God makes these things, just for me to be able to look and be fascinated, to be amazed, to be just blown away by just his greatness. You know, there's no biblical evidence or even support for Darwinian evolution in the Bible, nowhere. There's nothing in the Bible that says, yeah, it evolved that way. Nothing. Verse 26, then the Lord God said, let's make mankind in our image according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every crawling thing that crawls on the earth. And so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. And then God said, behold, I've given you every plant yielding seed that is on the surface of all the earth, and every tree which has fruit yielding seed. It shall be food for you. And to every animal of the earth, and every bird of the sky, and to everything that moves on the earth, which has life, I have given you every green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. So here, God creates all the creatures that live on dry land. And this includes all types of creatures that weren't talked about on the previous days. Everything else was made on this day. And he also made man. And something we see here is that God said he created man fully formed. It was already done. It was a done deal. There's nothing in there that says that he created him, you know, and then he was a product of evolution as time went on and millions of years happened that man became. No, he made man. That was it. Again, that whole idea of this progressive evolution to make something as complex as us, it doesn't make any sense at all. I don't know if you knew this about babies, brand new babies. A newborn child can breathe and swallow at the same time for up to 7 months. How about this one? 50,000 cells in your body died and were replaced by new ones while you heard me just read this sentence to you. Yeah. And if you're sitting next to your spouse or someone special, human lips are 100 more times sensitive than the tips of your fingers. Something else I read I thought was cool, that when you kiss somebody, your heart rate automatically like jumps up to 100. So After you leave here, go home and practice and see what that is, okay? Tell me. Yes, it's 102. It's a good guess. Anyway. Again, God declares that his work is good. It's good. Now, it says God makes man, and man is made in his image. Both men and women bear his image. And he says that humanity is special above all other of his creations. And to emphasize this, he put him in authority over all the earth and all the creatures. God blesses him and commands him to reproduce and fill the earth, to subdue it, to bring it under his authority, under his stewardship. God's saying, you're my representative here. Take charge. Now, we also clearly see that God, that to him, he made a difference between men and women. That was not an accident. Basically, we see that men are not women and that women are not men. And it's kind of pointless to argue, to wonder if men or women are superior to the other one. You know, you're in the argument, well, women are better. No, men are better. Well, without you. Somebody put it like this and I liked it. A man is absolutely superior at being a man. And a woman is absolutely superior at being a woman. However, when a man tries to be a woman, or a woman tries to be a man, you end up with something that's far inferior. That's what we know. You see, gender confusion, that's not of God. It's the inevitable result of our culture's spiritual, sexual, and moral depravity and decline. How many of us like hamburgers or steaks or meat? Yeah? I cannot be the only one. Tacos, enchiladas, right? Carnitas. Okay? Now? Okay? Initially, do you know that God put us on a vegan diet? Which I was like, oh, Lord, no. Right? God says that man and all other creatures are only to eat plants. That's what he said. Up to this point, we were 100% vegan. He doesn't change this, and I'm glad he does, in Genesis chapter 9. That's when it's changed. It says, and I made sure I wrote down the verses so you'll know it's okay to eat these other things. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. Just as I gave you green plants, I now give you everything. But you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood still in it. So yeah, we can eat meat now. Now, if somebody doesn't want to, that's totally up to them. But it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the sixth day, the entire universe is done, and all of its beauty is complete, and all of its perfection. And when he finishes here, it says, and God said that it was very good. Day 7 is chapter 2, and it says, and so in the heavens and the earth were completed, and all their heavenly lights. By the seventh day, God completed his work, which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day, all his work which he had done. And then God blessed the seventh day, and he sanctified it, because on it he rested from all of his work which God had created and had made. So on day 7, God rests. It wasn't because he was tired, it's because the work was done already. So he says, take a break here. But also what God was doing is he's establishing a pattern for us to follow, that one day out of 7, you need to rest. I was talking to somebody the other day, I go, how you doing? He goes, bro, I'm working like 7 days a week. And that's not how God wanted us to be. We're supposed to take a day for him. The keeping of the day of rest will eventually distinguish God's chosen people from the rest of the nations. In Exodus chapter 20, it says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do your work, but on the 7th day is to be a Sabbath to your Lord. On it you shall do no work. Neither you, nor your son, or your daughter, nor your male or your female servant, not your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the 7th day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. It is okay to relax, people. There's some of us that we feel guilty. You ever get that? I feel guilty when I realize I gotta be doing something. Yeah, relax. Because he wants you to rest, to enjoy what he's done. Take that time. So there it is, the days of creation. We got them all. Again, this is totally like a 30,000-foot view down this way. There's so much more there, and I would encourage you to just go on YouTube and look up. What are some good ones? Amazing facts about creation. You got a favorite animal? Look up strange facts about, and then put your favorite animal or whatever in there, and you'll get some cool stuff. Amazing facts about people. Anything. And just see what God did. Next week, we're going to look at Genesis chapter 2, verse 4 on. And we're going to see what happened to man and how he got here.